They threw a party in their new mansion. My son, my daughter-in-law. But my wife overheard a secret. A betrayal. That stole everything. And in that moment, their lavish dream became our nightmare. What happens when parents fight back? Get ready for a tale of ultimate revenge. If you love stories of cunning comebacks and sweet justice, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't miss out on more epic revenge tales. David and Elena had built their lives on the quiet foundations of hard work and unwavering devotion. Their small, comfortable home, nestled in a tree-lined suburb, was a testament to decades of careful saving and modest living. David, a retired carpenter, spent his days tending to his garden, his hands still callous from years of shaping wood. Elena, a former schoolteacher, filled their home with the aroma of home-cooked meals and the gentle hum of her sewing machine. Their greatest pride, however, was their son, Jason. Jason, their only child, had always been ambitious. From a young age, he'd shown a keen eye for opportunity and a drive that often left his parents marveling. He'd married Chloe, a woman as outwardly charming as she was driven, and together, they seemed to embody the modern success story. They lived in a fashionable part of the city, drove expensive cars, and spoke of business ventures with an air of sophisticated confidence that David and Elena, with their simple lives, could only admire from a distance. One crisp autumn evening, the phone rang. It was Jason, his voice brimming with an almost theatrical excitement. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe it. Chloe and I closed on the new place. It's massive, a real showstopper." He paused, letting the news sink in. "We're throwing a housewarming party next Saturday. You absolutely have to be there. It's going to be huge." Elena, holding the receiver, beamed at David. "Jason bought a new house," she whispered, her eyes shining with maternal pride. David smiled, a warmth spreading through him. Their son was doing so well. They had always taught him the value of honesty and perseverance, and it seemed to have paid off handsomely. As the week progressed, a glossy invitation arrived, embossed with a sprawling ornate J&C. The address was in the city's most exclusive district, a neighborhood David and Elena had only ever driven past, admiring the grand, imposing houses from afar. A mix of pride and a faint, almost imperceptible unease settled over Elena. Jason and Chloe's success, while celebrated, had always felt a little too rapid, a little too effortless. But she quickly dismissed the thought. Their son was a good boy, and he deserved all the good fortune that came his way. They spent the next few days picking out a thoughtful housewarming gift. A handcrafted wooden clock David had meticulously carved himself, a symbol of enduring time and family love. They looked forward to celebrating their son's achievement, eager to witness the fruits of his labor, unaware that the mansion they were about to enter was built not on success, but on a foundation of carefully constructed lies. The drive to Jason and Chloe's new mansion felt longer than usual. David, in his best suit, gripped the steering wheel, a nervous excitement fluttering in his chest. Elena, elegant in her favorite dress, clutched the carefully wrapped wooden clock. As they turned onto the tree-lined street, the houses grew progressively grander, each one a monument to wealth and status. Finally, they pulled up to a sprawling estate, its facade gleaming under the evening lights. Valets in crisp uniforms moved efficiently, parking luxury cars with practiced ease. Inside, the mansion was a whirlwind of activity. Crystal chandeliers glittered, music pulsed softly, and a throng of impeccably dressed guests mingled, their laughter echoing through the cavernous rooms. David and Elena felt an immediate sense of being out of place. Their simple attire, though clean and well-maintained, stood in stark contrast to the designer clothes and glittering jewelry surrounding them. they spotted Jason across the room, holding court with a group of animated guests, a confident, almost arrogant smile on his face. "Jason," Elena called out, her voice a little too loud in the sophisticated din. Jason turned, his smile faltering slightly as he saw his parents. He excused himself from his conversation with a hurried gesture and approached them, Chloe trailing elegantly behind him. "Mom, Dad, you made it," Jason said, his tone lacking genuine warmth. He gave Elena a quick, almost perfunctory hug, and a brief handshake to David. "This is quite the crowd, isn't it?" he added, gesturing vaguely at the room. Chloe offered a tight-lipped smile. "Lovely to see you both," she murmured, her eyes already scanning the room for more important guests. Throughout the evening, David and Elena found themselves largely ignored. Jason and Chloe were constantly busy, flitting from one group to another, introducing their parents only when absolutely necessary, and then quickly moving on. When they did introduce them, it was often with a subtle undertone of apology or explanation. "These are my parents," Jason would say, a hint of condescension in his voice. "They're from the old neighborhood. Very traditional." Chloe would add, "They're not really used to this kind of thing. Bless their hearts." David and Elena exchanged uneasy glances. The handcrafted wooden clock, which had felt so precious just hours ago, now seemed embarrassingly humble. They watched as Jason and Chloe paraded their new wealth, their every word and gesture designed to impress. Elena noticed Chloe, in particular, seemed to be constantly checking her phone, her conversations with friends often hushed and conspiratorial. A knot of discomfort tightened in Elena's stomach. This wasn't the proud, loving son they knew. This was a stranger, consumed by an illusion of grandeur, and something about it felt deeply, unsettlingly wrong. The opulent mansion, with its echoing halls and unfamiliar faces, began to feel less like a celebration and more like a gilded cage for Elena. The dismissive glances, the thinly veiled condescension from Jason and Chloe, and the constant feeling of being an outsider had worn her down. Seeking a moment of respite from the cacophony, she wandered away from the main ballroom, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpets. She found herself in a quiet wing of the house, a tastefully decorated study filled with leather-bound books and a grand mahogany desk. The door was slightly ajar, and a low, urgent voice drifted out. It was Chloe. Elena hesitated, not wanting to eavesdrop, but something in Chloe's tone, a sharp, triumphant edge, caught her attention. She heard her own name and David's, and a cold dread began to creep up her spine. Chloe was on the phone, her back to the door, her voice rising in volume with each sentence. "I told you. It was a piece of cake. Those old fools. They never even suspected a thing. David's pension fund. The land deeds. All signed over. Just like that." She let out a short, sharp laugh. "They thought they were helping us. Bless their naive hearts. Honestly, who leaves their entire retirement savings just sitting there, practically begging to be taken?" Elena's breath hitched. Her blood ran cold. Pension fund? Land deeds? A wave of nausea washed over her. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding in her ears, forcing herself to listen, to understand the horror unfolding before her. "This mansion, darling," Chloe continued, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction, "is all thanks to their generosity. Jason was worried, of course, but I told him. They're too old, too trusting. They wouldn't know a forged signature if it hit them in the face. And honestly, they're so behind the times. They don't even understand how money works anymore. They're just relics." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. "Oh, they're here tonight, yes. Making themselves useful, I suppose. Trying to fit in." It's quite amusing, actually. They look so out of place. Like two lost sheep in a wolf's den. The words, sharp and venomous, pierced Elena's heart. Not only had they been betrayed, but they were being mocked, ridiculed, seen as nothing more than pawns in their own son and daughter-in-law's elaborate scheme. The illusion of Jason's success shattered, revealing a grotesque tapestry of deceit and contempt. The mansion, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a monument to their foolish trust. With trembling hands, Elena fumbled for her phone, her mind racing. She needed to find David, to tell him, but how? How could she convey such a devastating truth without causing a scene? She saw David across the main hall, talking politely to a guest, a small hopeful smile on his face. Her heart ached for him. She walked towards him, her legs feeling like lead, and when she reached his side, she gripped his arm, her voice barely a whisper, laced with a chilling urgency. "David," she breathed, her eyes wide with unshed tears. "We have to go. Now." David, startled by the intensity in Elena's voice, looked at her, his brow furrowed with concern. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and filled with a terror he rarely saw. Without a word, he nodded, understanding that something profoundly wrong had occurred. They made their way to Jason and Chloe, who were once again engrossed in conversation with a group of guests. "Jason, Chloe," David said, his voice calm despite the turmoil brewing within him. "Elena isn't feeling well. We need to head home." Jason barely glanced up. "Oh, okay, Dad. Hope you feel better, Mom. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." He chuckled, a dismissive wave of his hand accompanying the remark. Chloe offered a perfunctory, "Get well soon, Elena," her eyes already drifting back to her conversation. Their indifference was a fresh sting. But David and Elena were beyond caring about appearances. They simply needed to escape the suffocating opulence and the crushing weight of the truth. The drive home was silent, save for Elena's quiet sobs. David, his hands tight on the steering wheel, kept glancing at her, a cold dread settling in his stomach. He pulled into their driveway, the familiar comfort of their modest home, feeling like a sanctuary after the mansion of lies. Once inside, Elena collapsed onto the sofa, tears streaming down her face. They stole everything, David," she choked out, her voice raw with pain. "Our pension, the land deeds. Chloe was bragging about it. They forged our signatures. They called us naive old fools." David listened, his own heart shattering with each word. Disbelief warred with a rising tide of fury. His son, his own flesh and blood, had not only betrayed them, but had done so with such callous disregard. The image of Jason's dismissive wave, Chloe's smug smile, replayed in his mind, twisting the knife deeper. The trust he had placed in his son, the pride he had felt, crumbled into dust. "No," David finally said, his voice low and trembling with suppressed rage. "No, this can't be true. Jason wouldn't. He couldn't do this to us." But even as he spoke the words, a part of him knew it was true. The rapid rise, the extravagant lifestyle, the subtle contempt, it all clicked into place, forming a horrifying picture of calculated deceit. Elena, wiping her eyes, looked at him with a newfound resolve. "He did, David. I heard it with my own ears. They think we're too old, too stupid to fight back." She stood up, her posture straightening. "But they're wrong. We're not going to let them get away with this. We're going to fight back. We're going to get everything back." David looked at his wife, seeing the fire in her eyes, the strength that had always been there, hidden beneath her gentle demeanor. He felt a surge of renewed determination. "You're right," he said, his voice firm. "We're not going to let them win. Tomorrow, We call Mr. Harrison. He's a good lawyer. And he'll know what to do. This isn't just about money anymore, Elena. This is about justice. And about teaching our son a lesson he'll never forget. The next morning, David and Elena sat across from Mr. Harrison, their family lawyer for over 30 years. Mr. Harrison, a man with a kind face and sharp legal mind, listened intently. His expression shifted from disbelief to grave concern as Elena recounted Chloe's overheard confession. David, still reeling from the shock, added details about their pension fund and the land deeds, which he now realized he hadn't seen in months, having trusted Jason with their safekeeping. This is a serious accusation, Elena, Mr. Harrison said, his voice calm but firm. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse. If true, the consequences for Jason and Chloe could be severe. Do you have any documentation? Any proof of these assets? Elena produced a folder filled with old bank statements, pension fund documents, and copies of the original land deeds. We always kept meticulous records, Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice steady. We just never imagined we'd need them against our own son. Mr. Harrison began his investigation immediately. Within days, the truth, uglier than David and Elena had imagined, began to unravel. Chloe, with Jason's complicity, had indeed forged their signatures on documents, transferring their pension fund into a shell corporation they controlled. The valuable piece of land, intended for their retirement home, had been used as collateral for a massive loan, the proceeds of which funded the lavish mansion and their extravagant lifestyle. But the investigation revealed another crucial detail. Jason and Chloe were not as financially secure as they pretended. The mansion, while impressive, was heavily mortgaged, and the loans they had taken out were high interest, with balloon payments looming. Their business ventures, which they had so confidently boasted about, were failing, propped up only by a precarious web of credit and the stolen assets of David and Elena. They were living on the brink of financial collapse, believing their parents' assets would be their endless safety net. They leveraged everything. David, Elena, Mr. Harrison explained, his voice grim. They took out loans far beyond their means, assuming your assets would cover any shortfall. They were banking on your continued ignorance and trust. This isn't just about reclaiming your money. It's about exposing a massive financial fraud that could ruin them entirely. David and Elena looked at each other, a shared understanding passing between them. The initial shock had given way to a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just about their pension anymore. It was about justice. It was about holding their son and daughter-in-law accountable for their greed and betrayal. What are our options, Mr. Harrison? David asked, his voice devoid of emotion. How do we make them pay for what they've done? Armed with irrefutable evidence and a clear legal strategy, David and Elena, guided by Mr. Harrison, initiated their counterattack. The first step was a meticulously planned freeze on all assets connected to Jason and Chloe that had been fraudulently acquired or leveraged using David and Elena's funds. This included the pension fund, the land deeds, and crucially, the very foundation of the mansion's financing. The legal notices landed on Jason and Chloe's doorstep like a thunderclap. They were blindsided. The confident smiles and dismissive waves from the housewarming party vanished, replaced by panic and confusion. Jason, initially furious, called his parents, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. What is this, Dad? Are you serious? You're suing your own son. David, his voice steady and cold, replied, You left us no choice, Jason. You stole from us. You lied to us. You thought we were too old and too stupid to notice. You were wrong. He then handed the phone to Elena, who simply stated, All communication will go through Mr. Harrison from now on. And with that, they hung up, severing the direct line of communication. A painful but necessary step. Chloe, ever the strategist, tried to salvage the situation. She attempted to transfer funds, sell off some of their more liquid assets, and even tried to secure new loans. But Mr. Harrison had anticipated their every move. The legal net was cast wide and tight, freezing their accounts, blocking asset transfers, and flagging them as high-risk borrowers. Their credit ratings, once pristine, plummeted overnight. The lavish lifestyle they had so carefully constructed began to unravel with terrifying speed. The designer clothes, the expensive cars, the gourmet meals all became luxuries they could no longer afford. Creditors, alerted to their precarious financial situation, began to call relentlessly. The mansion, once a symbol of their triumph, now felt like a gilded cage, its walls closing in around them. Jason and Chloe, who had always believed themselves invincible, found themselves trapped. Their attempts to contact David and Elena were met with polite, but firm refusals from Mr. Harrison's office. The parents, though hurting, remained resolute. They watched from a distance as the consequences of their son and daughter-in-law's actions began to manifest. A calculated strike that was slowly, but surely dismantling the empire built on lies. The game had begun. And this time, David and Elena were playing to win. The legal battle, once a private family affair, soon spilled into the public domain. Mr. Harrison, acting on David and Elena's behalf, ensured that the details of Jason and Chloe's fraudulent activities were meticulously documented and presented to the court. The local news, always hungry for a scandal involving the city's elite, picked up the story. Headlines screamed about the mansion of lies and the son who betrayed his parents. Jason and Chloe, once celebrated for their ostentatious success, became pariahs overnight. Their carefully curated social circle evaporated. Friends who had once flocked to their lavish parties now avoided their calls, fearing association with a couple embroiled in such a public and sordid affair. Business partners, wary of the legal repercussions and the damage to their own reputations, severed ties. Jason's struggling ventures, already on shaky ground, collapsed entirely, leaving a trail of unpaid debts and angry investors. Chloe, who had always prided herself on her cunning, found her schemes unraveling. Her attempts to manipulate the narrative through social media backfired spectacularly. The overwhelming evidence presented in court painted a damning picture. The public, initially intrigued, quickly turned against them, fueled by a collective outrage at the betrayal of elderly parents. The mansion, the very symbol of their ill-gotten gains, became a constant reminder of their downfall. With their assets frozen and their income streams cut off, they could no longer afford the exorbitant mortgage payments. Foreclosure proceedings began swift and merciless. The grand rooms, once filled with laughter and expensive decor, now echoed with silence and the looming threat of eviction. The valets, the caterers, the cleaners, all were gone, leaving Jason and Chloe to face the harsh reality of their self-inflicted ruin. Their arrogance, once a shield, now became their greatest vulnerability. They had believed themselves untouchable, too clever to be caught, too powerful to be challenged. But David and Elena, the naive old fools, had proven them devastatingly wrong. The legal system, slow but relentless, was closing in. Jason and Chloe faced not only financial ruin, but also the very real possibility of criminal charges for fraud and forgery. The housewarming party, meant to be a celebration of their triumph, had instead become the prelude to their spectacular, and very public humiliation. The price of their deceit was proving to be far higher than they had ever imagined. The final judgment came swiftly, a culmination of months of legal battles and undeniable evidence. Jason and Chloe were found guilty of fraud and forgery. The mansion, along with all other assets acquired through their illicit schemes, was seized to repay their creditors, and most importantly, to restore David and Elena's stolen pension and the value of their land. They faced significant fines and a suspended prison sentence, a stark reminder of the consequences of their greed. Their once glamorous lives were reduced to a fraction of their former glory, forcing them to confront a future stripped of the luxuries they had so desperately craved. David and Elena watched the proceedings from a quiet corner of the courtroom, their faces etched with a mixture of sadness and relief. The victory was bittersweet. They had reclaimed what was rightfully theirs, but the cost had been immense. The shattering of their family, the loss of the son they once knew. Yet, there was also a profound sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction that their integrity had prevailed. With their pension restored and the funds from their land sale, David and Elena decided to fulfill a long-held dream. They purchased a charming plot of land by a serene lake, far from the city's clamor and the painful memories of betrayal. David, with renewed vigor, began planning a small, comfortable home, one he would build with his own hands, filled with love and honest labor. Elena, surrounded by nature, found solace in her garden, planting new seeds, symbolizing a fresh start. They never heard directly from Jason and Chloe again. Rumors occasionally reached them of Jason struggling to find work, of Chloe trying to rebuild her life in a much humbler fashion. David and Elena felt no joy in their downfall, only a quiet understanding that their son and daughter-in-law were now living the consequences of their choices. The lesson had been harsh, but perhaps, in time, it would lead to genuine introspection. One sunny afternoon, as David hammered the last nail into the frame of their new porch, Elena brought him a glass of lemonade. They sat together, looking out at the shimmering lake, a gentle breeze rustling through the trees. "We did it, David," Elena said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We got our lives back." David squeezed her hand. "More than that, Elena. We kept our dignity. And that, my dear, is worth more than any mansion built on lies." The scars of betrayal would always remain, but they were now overshadowed by the strength of their bond, the resilience of their spirit, and the quiet triumph of justice served. Their new beginning was not just about a house. It was about rebuilding their peace, brick by honest brick, under the vast, open sky.